How do you develop bulletproof willpower? Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you hear my voice is a little deeper and sexier, it's because I've been down with a cold a little bit. Today we're talking about willpower. And throughout my life, I've been able to have very good willpower in terms of saying no to things, and saying no to things that I knew weren't really good for me, that maybe were a little bit tempting or maybe a lot tempting, but I knew that they were really going to lead me to something good. So I was really good at saying no to those things, but it didn't come easy. It's not something that came overnight. It's something that I developed and I worked on over and over and over again to develop that skill. But before we even talk about how to develop that skill, let's talk about something else. It's called the backwards law. The backwards law basically states that certain things in life become less likely the more you work toward them. Meaning that the harder you try, the farther away you get from achieving that thing. Now, there are very few examples of that in life. In fact, most of the things that you are going to pursue in your life tend to fall in the opposite category, where the harder you work toward them, the closer you get to it. But with certain things, that is the backwards law, or the backwards situation. The backwards law basically states that in certain things, it's going to be harder to get to it the harder you try. And so we need to let go in order to get what we are looking for. That applies, for example, in dating. If you're needy and pushy and being constantly messaging people and telling them, calling them on the phone, you become very needy, very pushy. It becomes off-putting to that other person. And so the more you work toward it, the less attractive you become to that person. The same thing happens with making friends. If you're trying way too hard and bending over backwards to please that person, the less you please that person and the more that person starts to distrust you. Now, why am I even mentioning this? It's because it's basically the same thing with willpower. Most people try to force themselves to develop that willpower. So they do whatever crazy thing you can think of. Some people would actually put rubber bands on their arms, and whenever they felt like tempted or by something or something, they would snap that rubber band to give themselves some kind of pain in order to punish themselves for having those thoughts. So in order to develop willpower, forcing yourself is just not going to work. It's just going to drain your mental energy. It's going to drain your willpower, and it's just going to make you more susceptible to become tempted by something, right? And you just end up falling to temptation that much easier because you've depleted all of your energy trying to force yourself to not do that thing. So the best way for you to develop willpower is to let go of that and to use the environment and to use the way you frame the thing that you're thinking about, right? And the way you present that and the beliefs you have around that, that is the thing that's going to help you actually develop that willpower. So here's the thing. Here's 3 things that we need to have in order to develop willpower. Number 1 is something I've already talked about in a different video. Go check that out. It's called the carrot and the stick. Basically, the idea is that you develop very clear understandings of what you're going to gain if you don't do that thing by abstaining from that thing, and what you're going to lose if you actually indulge in that thing, right? And so it's not enough to just make a quick list and say, okay, this is nice, it feels nice. It's not enough, okay? You need to really, really use all of your senses, all of your imagination, all your visualization powers, that's a big word, in order for you to really feel the pain of going down the road 10 years of your life and missing out on so many things and really experiencing how messed up your life became because you couldn't say no to that thing, be it whatever it is, be it porn, be it video games, be it social media, be it junk food, whatever it is, right? We all have some form of addiction, something that we know we shouldn't be doing, but we still kind of do it anyway. So in order for us to develop that willpower, we need to get very clear and really allow ourselves to experience the pain of what is going to happen if I keep going down that road, and experience the pleasure I'm going to get by not doing that thing. Number 2 is identifying your beliefs around this activity or this thing that you're trying to resist, and then start questioning those beliefs. See, we all have a certain belief about this thing that is attracting us to, or tempting us to do it, or to eat it, or to play with it, or whatever it is, right? So, let's say, for example, alcohol, right? Which is something that so many people do, and so many people do like casually every single day or socially. So, people have different beliefs around alcohol, and beliefs are as unique as the ecosystem. So, the thing that we need to understand here is, what are your beliefs, the beliefs that you hold deeply, and a belief is something that gives you a sense of certainty about what something means. It's not necessarily something tied to reality, it's just something that you believe. So here's the thing about beliefs. If you believe that, for example, alcohol is something that allows you to be funnier or more social, and it helps you make friends easier, right? If you believe those things, it's going to be much more tempting for you to go for alcohol every time you're in a social situation, because you feel the need to do it, because you believe that it is something that is going to help you in these different ways. So if you really challenge those beliefs and you start questioning, is that really true? And before you answer quickly and say, okay, yeah, it's true. No. Take some time to analyze it. Take some time to really dig deep and figure out, okay, is this true? Do I have all the facts, all the information that I could possibly need to understand if this belief is 100% accurate? Well, maybe not. Well, how so? Well, maybe it's not making me funnier, it's just making me care less. Or maybe it's not really making me make friends faster, it's just that other people are drunk as well. And by starting to dismantle these beliefs around that particular thing, then we rob it of its power, and it's no longer that tempting, it's no longer that pleasurable thing that we are lusting after. It's that something just that's there. It's not really beneficial, it's not really something that's going to help me, and it's something that's going to poison me in the long run. So why would I actually do that? So by destroying that previous belief, then it's no longer tempting, and we don't actually have to have that strong willpower in order to resist that thing, because it's not even tempting. And number 3 is your self-identity. See, your self-identity is basically going to determine the entire way that you behave. So if you believe yourself to be a non-smoker, how tempted are you going to be to light up a cigarette? Probably not at all, right? Because that's your identity. Your identity is tied to not smoking. So your entire identity hinges upon not smoking. So smoking, it goes against everything that you believe and do in your entire life, right? So if you identify yourself for whatever reason as an alcoholic, well then it's going to be very easy for you to become tempted by alcohol, right? So in order for you to change that, we need to change your self-identity. So what are the things that change self-identity? I could go really long about this, but maybe I'll do that in a different video, but let me know in the comments below if you want that. But there are 3 things that build your self-identity, okay? Number 1 is authority. Number 1 is authority. Authority, what does that mean? It means something or someone that has some kind of power or authority in your eyes, not in anybody else's eyes, in your eyes, that tells you that this is who you are, right? So that could be a school teacher, that could have been your parents, that could have been a mentor, whatever it is, a doctor, somebody who you perceive to have some level of authority that tells you, you are addicted to alcohol. Now, the second thing that builds this self-image is evidence, right? Now, it doesn't have to be real evidence. It doesn't have to be conclusive evidence. It just needs to be good enough for you, right? So, what evidence do you have that you are, in fact, an alcoholic? Well, I got drunk in this situation, I got drunk in that situation, and when I was feeling lonely or bored, I got drunk again. And so, you have evidence, quote unquote, evidence about you being an alcoholic, right? And all these things and all these little stacks of evidence basically come up to a big argument about why you're an alcoholic. So in order for you to dismantle that, you need to start questioning and deciding, well, just like we did with the beliefs, is this actually true? Does this actually make me an alcoholic? Well, maybe not necessarily an alcoholic, but it definitely means that I have a certain problem. But does this mean that I'm going to always be this way? Well, no, not at all. So is this actually conclusive? Not really. So when you start asking questions and dismantling these pieces of quote unquote evidence, then you start dismantling this idea. Now, the third thing that creates this self-image is repetition. So basically the authority and the evidence repeated over and over and over and over and over and over again. It's pretty self-explanatory. So guys, in order for you to change your self-identity, and I'm just sort of glossing over this whole thing kind of quickly, but you get the idea. In order for you to dismantle this and create an entirely new self-identity, you need to use the same three things. You need to use authority, you need to use evidence, and you need to use repetition. So what does that mean? It means that you need authority, you need some figure of authority. It could be yourself. It could be something that you even imagine. It could be you remembering Abraham Lincoln and visualizing it in your head, telling you, you can do whatever you want, son. And having that image can give you that level of authority. Now, in terms of evidence, you do the exact same thing. You start questioning the previous evidence that you have, and you start finding out new evidence to the contrary. So you start thinking about, well, am I actually an alcoholic? Well, in this situation, I didn't get drunk. Or in this situation, I started or I thought about it and I didn't do it. Or in this situation, I helped somebody else get out of that situation. So I'm not an alcoholic. When you start to find little pieces of evidence, and you can find it, believe me, if you look far enough, you will find it. So if you look for that evidence, you start to stack up a nice little pile that helps you build that self-confidence and build that new self-image of being a non-drinker instead of an alcoholic, right? So in order for you to really cement that, we need the third thing, which is repetition. Do it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again until it sticks. And that just becomes your part of your identity. And you're no longer a drinker. You're just a non-drinker. You're not an alcoholic. You're a non-drinker. And when you're a non-drinker, it's very differently. And you think very differently about alcohol. And you think very differently about the entire situation. Because you're actually coming from a different place. An alcoholic is somebody who is trying to resist the temptation of drinking. And somebody who doesn't drink is somebody who is not even tempted, right? Somebody who's not even interested in alcohol, right? Okay, so let's do a little bit of a recap here. So number one, we talked about the carrot and the stick, allowing ourselves to feel the pain and the pleasure of not sticking to that thing or doing that thing, right? Number two, we talked about beliefs around that activity, right? So if we have certain beliefs around that activity, how to dismantle them, how to question them, and then introduce new beliefs that are going to help us not be tempted by that thing. And number three, we talked about our self-identity. We talked about how to change that self-identity and then how to create a new self-identity that is going to actually empower us to not be even tempted by that thing. So if you do these three things correctly, if you use all these three things, in fact, only one of these things could be enough for you to not be tempted at all. But using three of these is just going to be absolutely impenetrable. You're going to be like Fort Knox, okay? You're going to have monster willpower, okay guys? Now, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that. I'll see you guys on the next video.